Hi, my name is Isi. It's an ancient Native American name. My grandmother is from a Native American tribe and she gave it to me. It translates as deer. My grandma believed that having received this name, I would become as graceful and as powerful as a deer. And among the Native Americans, they say that the name of an animal gives the person a deep connection with the animal world. My parents lived in the city, but every vacation I went to my grandmother's and she taught me lots of things. I can read the signs of nature. I spent a lot of time observing different animals, studying their habits and learning to understand them. And my grandmother also taught me to imitate the voices of animals, and I could call them or scare them away. I liked all animals, both domestic and wild. I've always believed that they're all intelligent and sometimes they're more honest and just better than most people. I often talked with the animals because our city was not far from the nature reserve. Literally a couple of hours by car and you were in a forest full of wild animals. This place attracted not only tourists but also hunters, and they were of course caught and punished, but after their hunts, abandoned cubs of wild animals sometimes were left alone, and because they could not survive in the forest on their own, they would be taken by the workers at a sanctuary, which was located in our city. There, they took care of them in conditions close to those in the wild and then released them into nature again. In addition, exotic animals were accepted into the nursery, those who were taken up as pets by people who could not take care of them. And even a bear was left behind a circus group who lived in a sanctuary. This was a very large sanctuary and a lot of money from the local budget was spent on its maintenance. And not long ago, our mayor suggested moving it closer to the reserve so that it would be on another state's territory, which meant that we wouldn't have to maintain it. The opinion of the city's residents was divided into two. Many were against it, but many were in favor. Even in our school, there were debates on this topic. I was strictly against the transfer because there was not always time to go to the reserve, so you could still come into the sanctuary and look at all the animals there. However, given that the animals are wild, many began to say that keeping them close was so dangerous. The management of the sanctuary assured that these animals were no more dangerous than a basic domestic dog, and if you handled them correctly, they would not cause any harm. I was very anxious about this and went to my grandma for advice. She said that everything was in our hands and one person could change everything, and that I just needed to ask animals for help, and they definitely would. All the way home, I thought about her words, and in the morning, I came to the sanctuary. I offered the management there my help as a volunteer, and they gladly agreed because very few people worked there, and there was lots and lots of work. I quickly got used to it. I began to spend a lot of time with the animals, observe their habits, and tried to establish contact with them. Several months had passed and a commission group came to the nursery. They had to make a final decision. Their main goal was to understand how dangerous these animals were for the local residents. The management tried to provide all the information they needed, and they made sure that all animals were at a safe distance. Everything was going well, and the checking in the wild section was almost over. But then something happened that no one expected. A monkey jumped off a branch and began to look closely at everyone. The chief inspector started shouting at the sanctuary director about why were the animals without muzzles. Well, can you imagine a monkey in a muzzle? That would be horrible. It looked like the monkey didn't like it either, and so it jumped towards the cage with the wild dogs and opened the door for them. Everyone froze. The monkey was obviously setting them free, and so they left, a whole pack of them. The director asked everyone to stand still and not get nervous. But then a small puppy approached one of the women in the commission and began to sniff her. She decided to make him go away and waved her hand at him. He jumped back and then began to growl and bark. She started running around with a wild cry. Oh god, something crazy started there. Everyone started screaming, squeaking, and the dogs barking and grabbing everyone by the bottom of their clothes. It was just pure chaos and panic. The sanctuary workers got so confused, and then I started barking like these dogs. I got the leader's attention. Then he began to bark very loudly in response, and all the dogs began to approach us. I continued to bark, and they understood me. The leader turned around and walked into the cage section. I told the monkey to close the cage, and she did it. After that, I offered to continue the checking process, but everyone was just shocked. The members of the commission started asking the director how I did it. Why did the animals understand my language? The director replied that I'd spent a lot of time with them and have learned to talk to the animals. And also, he said that I had an idea about how to use the nursery for the benefit of the city. They listened to me and kept the sanctuary. Do you know what I offered? It's simple. I am telling you that it's very important to teach children to communicate with the world of wild animals. It's very easy. The main thing is to be kind to them and observe them. I advised that it was the best to conduct biology and geography lessons in the sanctuary. We were supported by teachers from local schools, and so the lessons began to take place in the sanctuary. Seeing the results of the students and how the grades in biology and geography got increasingly better, the mayor's office not only kept the nursery, but also allocated additional money for the education program. Today, the sanctuary has become the most popular place in our state, and I often invite my grandma there, because it was thanks to her that all this happened.
My name is Michael, and my girlfriend left me because I love dogs. Yes, I can never ignore a hungry dog. I bring food to it and take it to the animal shelter, and if they can't accept a dog, keep feeding it for months, bringing food from home and looking for a kind person to adopt it. By the way, I met Ashley when I was looking for someone who would want to adopt a dog. She helped me to find a good family, and then we started dating. Her parents often went abroad and spent weeks there while Ashley lived alone. Of course, she had a grandmother who looked after her, but the old lady lived on the other side of the city and frequently just called Ashley to find out if she was okay. That's why soon we began spending lots of time at Ashley's place without being afraid that someone could catch us. Once, I saw a huge, dirty homeless person dragging a dog tied with a rope. The dog was whining and wiggling, trying to get free. Despite the fact the man was obviously homeless, he was rather fat, which helped me understand why he wanted that dog so much. I realized that he was one of those people who ate stray dogs and cats. The idea horrified me, and I decided to save the poor animal. I made an attempt to get the rope from the man, but he was holding it firmly. I tried to push him away, but he was too large, so I failed. We started fighting. The man was a lot stronger than I thought. He knocked me down and we kept struggling in the street dust. When I managed to fight my way free, the dog already left. He slowly moved away, mumbling something. I made up my mind not to tell anybody about this case, but a few days later my head got itchy. Ashley noticed that and examined me. She was terrified to see plenty of lice in my hair. She started screaming and giving a lecture to me, blaming my dogs for the situation. So I had to tell her the story about the man and the dog I was trying to save. She was very displeased and said that I had to get rid of the lice. However, I couldn't afford it because I spent all the money I had on dogs. That's why I simply shaved my head. Ashley said I couldn't visit her until she finished disinfecting the house. The thing that scared me the most at that moment was that I would be mocked at school because of my bald head. Well, you know, there are always popular and cool guys who decide how you should look and what you should do. And if you're different, you get bullied and mocked. I held my tongue when they made jokes about me, but I wanted to teach them a lesson. However, now I understand that I shouldn't have done that. One day during a break, one of the cool guys said something about my appearance again. Others joined in and soon I was surrounded by a crowd of kids who were laughing at me. In the middle of that funny situation, I raised my head and said that I had leukemia. Then I broke down in tears and ran away. Everyone stopped talking. They were shocked. Some of them tried to make excuses saying they didn't know anything about my condition. I couldn't have expected such a thing from myself. I never wanted any of this, but my life changed. Nobody laughed at me anymore. Some kids allowed me to take their place in line to the cafeteria, and there were people who would come up to me and try to comfort me, offer support, and even do homework. But I always refused from that. At first, I even enjoyed the situation, but I knew that it was wrong, and I certainly didn't know how to get away with it. Ashley called and said how disappointed she was with me. She said she couldn't afford disinfection of the entire house. Well, her parents owned a large 2-story house and was afraid that the lice had already laid their eggs everywhere. She was shouting at me, and she definitely couldn't stop it. When she hung up, I began thinking where I could find money for the disinfection. A couple of days later, the leukemia situation got out of control. The information about a sick boy who was bullied at school spread really fast, and soon a group of journalists arrived to talk to me. I kept lying and prayed that my parents didn't find out about that. The guys who mocked me were forced to apologize to me publicly. I don't know who felt sorrier at that moment, them or me. After the news was shown on TV, Ashley came to visit me at school. She apologized and said she spent the entire night crying. She asked why I hadn't told her the truth, but I said that I already felt better and that I was going to be all right. I was too humiliated to tell her the real truth. In the middle of my conversation with Ashley, I heard the telephone ringing. It was my father. I felt dizzy and must have shaken because Ashley made an attempt to support me, thinking that I didn't feel very well. I said that I was okay and answered the phone. My father asked me where I was. I replied that I was at school. "I'll be waiting for you at home," he said and hung up. Just so you understand, my father is a tough and conservative man. We rarely have serious conversations, but when we do, I can hardly forget them. I came home. My father was sitting in an armchair. He was angry. I saw an open bottle with his heart pills. Then a difficult conversation followed. When it was over, he said, "It's good that your mom hasn't seen the news. I don't think she can take it." I promised to tell the whole truth and apologize to everybody. I also had to write a letter to the journalists, asking for a retraction. And here I am, lying in bed for 3 hours already, willing to have a heart attack or even leukemia, because I can't even imagine how ashamed I will be telling my story to everyone I know. I understand that Ashley will leave me anyway, and that will be the right thing to do, because the lies are nothing compared to the fact that I'm such a liar. Should I run away from home until it's not too late? What do you think? Leave your comments.